Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toadstool Sports. Sunday, February 1st. We wound up, I think, probably on the winning side of January. Let me make sure. I would have to check because yesterday we did well. Although, I'm still not happy because it looked like it was going to be better than it was. Yeah, we had a winning January, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Not by a ton, but yes. Thank you, sir. Tyson, what's up? Yes, thank you. Yes, trying to give out the winners here. Thank you. We went 5-2 yesterday. It felt like it was way better because we started out 5-0, and it looked like it was about to go 6-0, and that did not happen. UCF started out outright win. Fordham outright win is a huge underdog, so we got 2 outright dog wins there. Actually 3 because Southern Miss hit as well, although they were really small dogs. So, I mean, playing them, you're basically just playing them to win the game. But the Fordham one and the UCF one, that's why I always say if you're playing the underdog, like you're playing the spot, but you're basically saying you think that they have a better chance to win the game than what the odds makers are giving them, basically. So I always recommend putting some amount on the money line. So like for the UCF one, small underdog, 5-point underdog, I recommend 10% of the bet on the money line, 90% of it on the spread, and then the big underdog, Fordham, just because I feel like it's like if they actually happen to win outright and you feel like, oh man, it's like such a missed opportunity. That one, like a 12-point dog, anything that's like 10, between like 10 and like 17 or so, I'm pretty much recommending like, I would say put 3% of the bet on the money line, and then anything above that, maybe like 1%, just put like a very small amount on it just in case. Unless it's like if it's like a 30-point underdog, then all right, then maybe, yeah, just let it go. But I don't like leaving money on the table, man, when I'm right about something. Although, of course, you're going to lose a lot of those money line plays, but that's the whole thing. Like, I think it still works to your advantage in the end. Then we did get Long Beach State. That number was up to 8.5, but luckily they covered and lost by 7. They were pretty much hanging around in that game, but luckily they did cover all the numbers. Both favorites covered as well, Syracuse and New Orleans. So, wait, was it 6-2 yesterday? Hold on. Am I misremembering things? Did I add, no, because we had, yeah, it was 6-2, I guess, because I guess we had 7 basketball. Am I right? Do we have 7 basketball plays? Yeah. So it was, yeah, so we went 6-2 yesterday. My apologies. And we started out 6-0, I guess. So it looked like we were going to go 7-0 then with Albany, but Albany blew the game, and they were actually up to 2.5-point favorites. So if you played that game late, you actually got a little bit of a better number on it. And they still didn't cover that. They lost by 3. Very frustrating there. Missing by a 0.5 point or 1.5 points, depending on what you played there. I thought they would win the game, and they were in position to maybe do just that. And then that was the end of the day. And then, of course, I mean, it was the end of the win streak. The streak ends as the New Jersey Devils definitely were a huge letdown. The game was closer than the final score looked. I think there was one empty net goal maybe at the end, but yeah, I mean, they kind of fell apart in that game. They were tied 1-1 and then fell down 2-1. They were still kind of in that game. It was like statistically fairly close, which is what you want with an underdog like that. But then, yeah, it pretty much went to hell. All right, let's move on to today. We got college basketball. I have two plays today. They're both in college basketball. You probably already know what one of them is because I talked about it yesterday and I already talked myself into it. And I think the market is disagreeing with both of my plays. So be it. We're going to have these two plays here. There are three hockey games that I'm not really interested in. And there is a decent-sized NBA board, but again, I'm skipping NBA. I might be being too selective, but I don't like the NBA board, man. It's just the way that it is. The way that I see things, I don't love it. Jake, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Hot sauce recommendation. Depends what you're eating. And I'm going to get annoyed here in a minute because we have the stupid emergency broadcast system going off again on my TV that I always have on over here. Maybe I should just not have the TV on. Hot sauce recommendation. Well, since we don't know what you're putting it on, you want to go with something versatile. Go with Secret Aardvark, man. You can't really go wrong with Secret Aardvark. It's not too hot. It has a decent amount of spice. It's got habanero in it. It's tomato-based sauce. They make some good stuff, man. The classic Secret Aardvark. You're putting it on eggs, yeah, that works. Secret Aardvark, it's standard, man. You can put it on pretty much anything, and it works well. It's a very standard, classic hot sauce, but it has really good flavor, and it's not too hot, so it's not gonna overwhelm you, but it does have enough heat that it will hit you a little bit. Secret Aardvark, let's go with that. Secret Aardvark Sunday. It is one of my favorite sauces, so I mean, it's definitely, it's not an obscure sauce, but it's, Oh, yeah, that is good. Queen Majesty Black Coffee Habanero. I have some more of that right now, yeah. She makes really good stuff. She has very few hot sauces in her line. She is one woman, and every one of her sauces is very good quality because she puts out so few sauces. You pretty much know that every one of them is going to be good. Black Coffee Habanero is probably the best one that she does. Yeah, it's good. That one works on everything, too. That's very good on eggs as well. So I would say it's mild heat factor, but it does have noticeable heat as well and good flavor on that, too. Yeah, her standard three, like the Holy Trilogy from her, that one. The mildest one that she has in the trilogy there is the jalapeno lime. Or whatever. I think it might have cilantro in it too. I don't know. That one's good as well. That one really good on chicken, but all of these still work on eggs too. Eggs can kind of just have whatever hot sauce on them. And then the third one in that trilogy, probably the hottest one, is the Scotch Bonnet Ginger, the yellow sauce. Also good. I like ginger. If you don't like ginger, you probably won't like it. But if you do, then you probably will. That one. Probably that is a better sauce for chicken than anything else as well, but it does work on other things. It'll work on different Asian foods. Everything works on eggs too, so. Talking Queen Majesty there, man. I do have those. I have all three of those hot sauces, and then I think I have her, she has one that has charcoal in it, and I think it has fig, and I forget what else in it. It might be ghost pepper. I think it's a little bit hotter. I do have some of that right now, too. Although I actually don't prefer that one over those other three. It's a little bit odd, but it's not bad at all. It is still pretty good. All right. College basketball. Let's get into it here, man. First game is at noon on the USA Network on TV here. Of course, it's USA Network, so it's going to be Atlantic 10. It's Rhode Island at Duquesne. This game, I think really the main part of the handicap here is Rhode Island just pulled off three really huge wins in a row. They're coming off 4 big games in a row. Actually, their last 5 games, if you look at their results, they're on this huge roll where they destroyed Davidson on the road, and they were probably an underdog in that game. They played fairly close at home against VCU. They went on the road and pulled off what I presume was another upset at Richmond. came home and beat George Mason, who was, I think, maybe winless. Yeah, they were winless in the conference at that point. That was a huge win. And then they upset Dayton on the road in their most recent game, which was the biggest upset out of all of those. So this Rhode Island team, they're on this huge run right now, but I think there's got to be a letdown coming here, man. And maybe it comes here. 2 straight road games, 3 road games in the last 4 games, coming up the biggest upset that they've pulled so far. I would have to lean towards Duquesne in this game. Duquesne coming into this game off a loss to St. Bonaventure at home. Not a great loss, although the Bonnies are not really as bad as their record looks. But to me, I think the spot sets up a lot better for Duquesne. The only issue is if they're looking ahead to George Mason or not. But I think if you're Duquesne right now, after that loss, you're probably not really going to overlook a team that's above you in the conference standings. So Duquesne would be my preference in this game. When I looked earlier, the market wasn't agreeing. Yeah, it's not agreeing with me. Duquesne's actually a favorite. They're down from 3 to 2.5. 56% of the tickets, 94% of the cash on Rhode Island. So the money's coming in on Rhode Island, but I do not agree with that. I would lean Duquesne in this game. And again, like, why would anybody want to lay points with the team with the worst record, right? I mean, that is something that will always kind of catch my attention when you see something like that. Odds makers telling you these teams are not separated by that much power ratings wise. CBS, we do have a Big Ten game. There's some Big Ten and SEC and Big 12 action today. Number 12, Purdue, who I think is definitely better than the 12th best team in the country, man. It's just that they're on a slide right now that's dropping them in the rankings. They're at Maryland. I mean, Purdue, obviously they shouldn't have much difficulty with this game against Maryland. Purdue coming off a bunch of losses. You got to think they're going to show up for this game, but they do have to travel to Maryland, which is a little bit of a weird spot. 4th road game in 5 games, so you could make the argument it's a little bit of a questionable spot, and they are coming off of a couple of somewhat big games against Illinois. I mean, obviously the Illinois game was huge, and they did lose that game as a favorite, and then they did lose again as a favorite at Indiana. But, you know, Indiana always gets up for Purdue. I think it's a bigger game for Indiana. They're like the little brother at this point in Indiana. So the fact still remains that Purdue is coming off 3 losses in a row as a favorite. They don't really have anything big upcoming. Oregon next, then they have their huge game against Nebraska. So I kind of think Purdue should bounce back here and show up. Maryland, I mean, they don't really have anything else to do but show up at this point. They just got obliterated by Michigan State on the road in their last game. So they will show up as well. It's just that Maryland is not a very good team at all. Purdue is a 14.5-point favorite. They'll be the public side, 85% of the tickets, but it looks like they might be getting the money as well, 96% of the cash. I would probably lean towards Purdue in this one, even though they like to play slow. They can still score quite a bit. This Maryland team is very bad, and if you're going to actually get a focused Purdue for once off of those 3 straight losses as a favorite, they probably should take care of business. I mean, I highly doubt that they lose the game outright, but laying points of that magnitude is a bit of a different story. I don't want to touch the game, obviously. But I think you could also kind of explain the loss to Illinois because Purdue was coming off that huge game, the loss to Indiana because Purdue was coming off that huge game against Illinois. All right, 1 p.m. ABC, we have one of the biggest games of the day. Number 23, Alabama. Number 19, Florida. I think both of these teams are actually probably underranked by those rankings, although Alabama maybe less so. Ken Palm's got Alabama 16th, and he's got Florida 7th. So Florida is still very underrated because they had a bunch of losses in the out-of-conference schedule. They're extremely battle-tested. Both of these teams have faced very difficult schedules, though. They both play fast. They're both good offenses, but Florida has way more balance. Florida is the significantly better defense in this game. And even though Alabama is the better offense, Florida is definitely the better team here, which is why Florida is a substantial favorite here. But there is a little bit of a revenge factor here because Florida won both meetings last year. Florida won at Alabama in a fairly close game, and then Florida won by double digits in the SEC tournament, I'm pretty sure, against Alabama. So there might be a little bit of a revenge motive here for Alabama, although it's not really one of those situations where this team ended our season because both teams made the NCAAB tournament anyway. And they did not meet up in the tournament because they were on opposite sides of the bracket. Alabama's coming off destroying Missouri, but, they're not going to overlook Florida, especially after losing to them both times last year. Florida coming off destroying South Carolina. Again, both teams kind of coming into this with momentum. Both teams should show up here. The revenge motive might, just push me towards the Alabama side just slightly. Florida is the better team, though, and that's the problem here, where people might look at this number and think, oh, well, these teams are both ranked. They're not separated by that much in the rankings. They both have somewhat similar records, and might think that the line looks too big for what is a competitive game like this. So in that respect, you might want to be looking towards Florida, but the money is not agreeing with that. And again, I think based on the fact that Alabama might want a little bit of revenge for last year, I would, probably agree with the market and lean slightly towards Alabama, but I do not have a strong opinion here. Florida did go up to an 8-point favorite. 56% of the tickets on them, 66% of the cash on Alabama. So it does look like some of the actual money is taking it back on Alabama. We do have some interesting MAAC games here. Now, Sacred Heart, they're coming off a win where they didn't cover. Oh, no, wait, my mistake. I thought they were coming off that Niagara game last week, I think is when it was, where we took the loss on that one because they didn't cover. But they probably were looking ahead to Quinnipiac, I guess. I didn't think that they really would be, but that is what happened. Maybe I should have left it off my card. But now Sacred Heart's actually coming off a nice win, an upset win on the road at Quinnipiac, and it was revenge for losing to them at home earlier in the season. That was a big win for Sacred Heart, man. So they might just not have a whole lot left in the tank here from Merrimack. So they have to play these two big games in a row on the road. Merrimack is not as good as Quinnipiac, though, even though their record is better. I don't believe that they're power rated higher than Quinnipiac. Problem with looking towards Merrimack in this spot, though, is that Sacred Heart lost at home to Merrimack already. So there is the road revenge angle in play here for Sacred Heart. They're not going to overlook Merrimack. It's just a question of how much do they have left in the tank at this point. But the other thing is, because Merrimack beat Sacred Heart at Sacred Heart already, Merrimack might overlook them. And that's kind of the problem. Merrimack's not exactly in a good spot here because they just beat St. Peter's to split the season series, and they're the two teams that are atop the conference right now. So that's a big win for them against St. Peter's. They only have Mount St. Mary's up next, so not really a look ahead, but both teams, I think, are in kind of bad spots here. So they're both coming off big wins. The money is indicating on Sacred Heart for what it's worth. Merrimack's a 6-point favorite. I mean, I don't know if I trust Merrimack to lay points like that, even when they are the better team. 146, not a very high total in that one. 67% of the tickets are on Merrimack, 68% of the cash on Sacred Heart. I can't get involved in it again because you could make the argument that both teams are in letdown spots, but I guess I will agree with the market just because I do think Sacred Heart will put in another effort, and or Merrimack might just not take them seriously because Merrimack already beat them on the road. Siena at Canisius in the MAAC. I'm talking about this game because Siena just had kind of a bad performance in Niagara, and they're staying in Buffalo because Niagara and Canisius are both in Buffalo, so no real travel here for Siena. And they did not have a good game there against Niagara. Niagara was awful. Siena was a big favorite in that game, but I think Siena was probably in a letdown spot after they had a big win over Marist by almost 20 points the game before that. So they did not do well against Niagara. I think because of that, they might bounce back here. I guess you might have to be a little bit concerned. They might be looking ahead to Iona because they did lose at Iona already, so maybe they look ahead there, although Iona's not doing that well in the standings. So I do think that after a close game like that, maybe they will bounce back, show up for this. However, they did already beat Canisius by over 20 points. So there is the possibility they do still overlook this team as well. But I figured it was an interesting game to talk about anyway. Canisius, though, they're coming off a huge performance against Marist. So Marist was definitely a favorite on the road there, probably a decent-sized favorite on the road. Yeah, 9.5, actually higher than I thought. And Canisius actually took them into overtime. So I think this is a bad spot for Canisius coming off of that game, even though ideally they would show up for a game against Siena, as they already lost to them once. They got Niagara on deck, which is not good either, because even though Niagara sucks, they're Canisius' main rival because they're both in Buffalo. Canisius already lost to Niagara at home. Very, very ugly. So I think that this might actually be a sandwich spot, believe it or not, for Canisius because the Niagara game's a rivalry game and a revenge game. So I can't get involved in the game. 57% of the tickets on Canisius, which seems very strange. I don't know why the public would want them. 78% of the cash on Siena. Siena is definitely the better team. There's no question about that. They're down from 9 to 8.5 here. I think given the fact that Canisius is in the spot that I just described, and primarily the fact that they just took a team that's much better than they are into overtime, whereas Siena just barely scraped by as a big favorite, I would agree with this market read, and I would lean towards Siena in the game, but there are definitely some factors that contradict that a little bit. But I think most of the factors line up in that direction. Samford at Western Carolina. My first read on this was, well, Western Carolina just upset East Tennessee State on the road. Huge upset. East Tennessee State is atop this conference here, the SoCon, and East Tennessee State was almost a 10-point favorite in this game. They actually opened 11.5, it looks like. So that was a big upset for Western Carolina. And shockingly, they actually swept East Tennessee. Season sweep. East Tennessee's 2 losses were both at the hands of Western Carolina. It's like they just have the matchup edge against them for some reason. Now they're playing Samford. Could be in a bit of a letdown mode here, although I would worry a little bit because they did lose at Samford. You could make the argument that there is a little bit of a revenge factor here for Western Carolina. Samford did actually technically cover that number, although they only won by 5. They were 4.5 when the game went off. But Samford might show up because they do probably remember that game being a bit close, kind of close for comfort as the favorite against Western Carolina. So they might still show up for a road game here. Problem with Samford, though, is they're coming off a big game themselves where they were looking for some road revenge against Furman, who is one of the better teams in the conference right now, and they fell just short by 5 points as, I assume, a bigger underdog than that. Let me see, 5.5, so not too much bigger, but still a fairly big game that they're coming off of there, and it's a third road game in 4 games for them now, back-to-back road games. So I have some concerns about Samford, although I still lean that way because Western Carolina's coming off pretty large upset there, but the money is coming in on the Western Carolina side. I don't really agree with that. Western Carolina is a 1.5-point favorite, 87% of the cash on them, 57% of tickets on Samford, so very strong market read against what I think in that game on Western Carolina. I don't really like bucking market reads like that unless I have a very strong situational read on the game, which I don't really hear. But you could also make the argument that, well, why is Western Carolina favored in this game when they have the worst record, worst overall record? It looks a little bit strange, but odds makers are telling you, well, Samford's down from where they were the last couple of years. These teams are not separated by that much. But I still kind of lean towards Samford just because of the letdown aspect of that. Then ESPN2 has Chattanooga and Furman, which I guess is an okay game. I mean, neither team is that great. They're both kind of mediocre in the conference. Furman is the better team, though. Chattanooga is actually at second to last place right now in the conference, even though I'm not sure that they're the second worst team in the conference, though. I don't really think so. Now, these two teams did already play, and Chattanooga lost at home to Furman by 18, by 11. I can't do math. By 11. I'm just, like, seeing things. I'm seeing, like, I don't know. I'm looking at, like, the wrong lines. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, man. And even then, I was still wrong. I don't know what I'm thinking. Furman beat them by 11 at Chattanooga. Now, Chattanooga is coming off a very, very disgusting loss to Wofford, who is one of the better teams in the conference as well right now. 81-55 at home. Nobody wants to lose like that. So I do think this is a maximum effort spot for Chattanooga here. They're coming off an awful loss. They have at least on the scoreboard, they have the road revenge aspect of this game. So that they will be focused, but also it might mean Furman might not take them that seriously. Furman is coming off the win over Samford, even though they barely covered. I don't know that they're going to pay attention to this because they do have East Tennessee on deck, which is a much bigger game as they're atop the conference, and I don't believe they've played yet this season. So I like Chattanooga in this game. Let me see what the market read looks like here. looks like there is maybe some agreement there. Furman dropped from 8.5 to 8 here. They're going to be public, most likely, and the public might get involved in this game just because they want some TV action in the afternoon. 92% of the tickets, 100% of the cash is obviously not accurate. But, yeah, I don't really have... Yeah, I mean, that game, I would only take Chattanooga. Like, I don't really think there are too many conflicting things there. I like Chattanooga in that one, and that probably is... That's probably the one that I have the least conflict in my mind about out of all the games I've talked about so far, which I've talked about every single game so far. And that's going to continue because we have Iowa State at Kansas State on Fox. Number 8, Iowa State. Iowa State probably actually better than that. They're legit. They're rolling into this game off of 3 wins in a row. They just beat Colorado. Who cares? It's not a terrible spot for Iowa State coming into this one. These teams haven't played each other yet. Weird things can happen, though, when you go to Manhattan. Kansas State could get overlooked right now because they're way at the bottom of the conference. So maybe you don't take them totally seriously. Kansas State's lost a bunch of games here. They have 1 win in conference, so they're likely to just show up against anybody. Iowa State's certainly the way better team, though. Iowa State is laying double digits. They're up from 12 to 12.5, but they are going to be the public side. 79% of the tickets, 70% of the cash. With a ranked team like Iowa State like that, you probably at least know that the odds makers are probably going to have to skew the line a little bit in their direction. So even though there's no real situation here, and sometimes that does mean the better team will show up and get the job done, I kind of lean with the market in this one and lean towards taking the points with Kansas State in that one just as a home underdog that's of a magnitude that I think is maybe a little bit too much, getting the double digits there at home. So I would probably lean that way, but not a strong opinion. CBS Sports at 2 p.m., Kansas City at St. Thomas. I don't know why this game is televised. I mean, I'm sorry, but Kansas City is just not a good team. St. Thomas is one of the best teams in the Summit, although unfortunately for them, they're probably actually not as good as North Dakota State is at this point. I wanted to see St. Thomas get into the tournament, man, but it might not happen. They still haven't done it in their program history because they're pretty new to Division I. I feel like North Dakota State gets into the tournament fairly often, but Kansas City, they're a really bad team in this conference. They're only better than Oral Roberts, probably. Although they're going to show up at least for a game against St. Thomas, most likely, because they're one of the better teams in the conference. St. Thomas is coming off a pretty rough loss at home to North Dakota. St. Thomas were 11.5-point favorites in this game, and they took the loss. So when a good team takes a loss like that, usually they will show up focused in the next game after a bad game like that. But North Dakota is actually ahead of them in the standings now, so you could actually make an argument that was a big game for both teams, although I'd be looking more towards fading North Dakota after that win than I would be looking to try to fade St. Thomas and thinking that, that was a big game or anything. I think probably because they were a huge favorite there, probably they do bounce back and show up in this game, but I don't think I'd want to lay as many points as they're laying here either, though. They are up from 18.5 to 19 here. The money is actually coming back on Kansas City, formerly UMKC. 50% of the tickets, 98% of the cash on UMKC. So the money is saying UMKC there. Some of it might be a numbers read because that is a lot of points to lay, although in the Summit League, usually you get high-scoring games. It's kind of a high-scoring league. So I don't really know what I would want to do with this game. My first instinct was St. Thomas should bounce back and play better here than they did in that prior game. So I was kind of leaning towards laying the points, but the market is saying otherwise, and I don't have a strong opinion really on the side there at all. Appalachia, Franklin, what's up, man? Or should I call you Scott Adams? That Scott Adams image almost looks like Homer Simpson. Is it Bowling Green's year? No, I do not think so. They have a good defense. They're one of the best defenses in the MAC probably, but they're definitely not as good as, certainly not Akron. Akron is still the best team in the MAC power ratings wise, and in my opinion, Miami, Ohio, can't really argue with them continuing to win, and they did yesterday too, although that was against a weak team, and in a decent spot. But Miami, Ohio is probably the second best team in that conference. We could look at KenPom, but I think there are probably at least 4 teams in that conference that are ahead of. So he has got Akron first, Miami, Ohio second, significantly lower than Akron, by the way. He does have Bowling Green third, so I was kind of expecting maybe Kent State or Ohio to be ahead of them, but he's got Kent State fourth, and then Toledo actually next. Then UMass, then Buffalo. Where's Ohio? Wow, Ohio's way down. I had Ohio way off, I guess. Ohio, very lucky team. Still don't see Bowling Green getting past those other teams, but Bowling Green is a little bit sneaky in that conference because they don't look that good. And teams that play defense usually get overlooked. People love offense. They don't like defense, so people overlook the more defensive teams and think that they're worse than they actually are. But I still think it's probably going to come down to Akron and Miami, Ohio, though. And I still think that maybe I don't know, man. I just don't see Bowling Green actually being better than Kent State, although they do have the better defense. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting conference tournament. All right, we have ESPNU at 2 p.m. has East Carolina at Florida Atlantic. I don't know who's going to want to watch this game either. Wichita and Tulsa, my mistake. I don't even think I want to talk about East Carolina FAU. That game is so bad. It's so ugly. The TV game is Wichita and Tulsa. All right, that's a better game, actually. Wichita coming into this game off of beating Memphis, though. And whenever you beat Memphis in this conference, that's satisfying, even though Memphis looks like they're a little bit down from where they were. I don't think they're really that bad still this year, though. Decent win for Wichita there, although I don't really think they're going to overlook Tulsa either, because Tulsa is possibly the best team in this conference, in the American. Tulsa coming up beating North Texas, not a huge game for them really there. North Texas a little bit down this year. But they do have Florida Atlantic on deck, and Florida Atlantic is one of their main competition right now in the conference standings. So the game might have me leaning a little bit towards Wichita here because they might get overlooked a little bit. They're kind of just in the middle of the pack there, just kind of hovering around. To me, it seems like they're getting overlooked a bit. I probably prefer Wichita plus the points in this one. Tulsa's a 6.5-point favorite. Line hasn't really moved. 90% of the tickets on them, though. The public likely will be on them if they're going to be playing this game, but 78% of the cash, so less of the money than the tickets on Tulsa. I wouldn't disagree with Wichita on that one, though. Yeah, I mean, I just think, again, I think they have the potential to be overlooked a little bit. It could be a look-ahead spot for Tulsa, although I guess you might have to slightly worry about Wichita being in letdown mode after Memphis, but probably not because Memphis isn't that good this year, and Tulsa is right near the top of the conference. All right. If you want me to talk about East Carolina FAU, I can come back to it, but I don't have any real opinion on it at all. It's just an ugly game. I am talking about the TV games, though. TNT, True TV has TCU and Colorado, which is really not the greatest matchup. TCU probably have kind of played their way out of tournament consideration at this point, although you don't know what they're going to do with the remainder of the season, but they're coming off a pretty big performance against Houston, man. They didn't cover. They lost by 9, but they were kind of hanging around in that game. So I think they could be in a weird spot coming off that loss to Houston, a big emotional game for them. Texas rivalry as well. Now they have to go into elevation, play Colorado, though they did go out into Utah already, and they played well against BYU. And then I think the reason they lost to Utah on the heels of that is because they had played a huge game against BYU. So I think they were probably hung over. So you could say that TCU is already used to playing in elevation at the very least, and Colorado is not as good as BYU, obviously. Now, Colorado is coming off getting smoked by Iowa State, though. No real shame in that. Iowa State's an elite team, but Colorado might have more of a tendency to bounce back from that. I mean, they are going to pretty much show up for any game at this point because they have 6 straight losses. So I do think the spot does set up better for Colorado in this game. That's the way I would lean. The line also looks a little bit crazy, where TCU is barely favored here. I know it's because they're on the road, but I think the public is going to only want to lean towards TCU in this one, even though their record is not that much better. It's a pick the winner type of line there, although, of course, it has to factor in home court, of course. TCU, yeah, I mean, again, I would lean to Colorado in this game. TCU did drop from 2 to 1.5 here, 71% of the tickets on them. 80% of the cash, so it does look like the cash percentage is on them for now, but I don't know. I think they will be the public side. I lean towards Colorado in that one. Next game up, you get a TV game. It's an ugly Big Ten game, but it is one of my best bets. This is going to be real ugly, this one. I mean, either way that I go in this game, it's going to be ugly, but I'm going the even uglier way. We're going to take Penn State +1. So we basically need Penn State to win the game. And I know they have not won in the Big Ten yet. They're bad, I know, but Minnesota is not that much better. This is on Peacock. It's at 2 p.m. Mostly this is about the spot. I don't think Minnesota's in a good spot at all, as they're coming off a few pretty big games. They were hanging around for a while against Nebraska before Nebraska started running away with it in the end. But Minnesota had that lead in that game in the second half, and then Minnesota turned around and went for revenge on the road at Madison after Wisconsin beat them in Minnesota. Minnesota played really well in the game. They were big underdogs in this game. Wisconsin, I mean, they're likely to be a tournament team at this point. They beat Michigan. This is also a rivalry between Minnesota and Wisconsin, so you know Minnesota got up for that game. It was a huge game for them. Wisconsin were 10-point favorites, basically, when the game went off. So this is a huge performance from a big underdog, and you know when a big underdog performs like that, I like to look to fade them in the next game. But look at how the game played out, too. Minnesota was winning this game by 20 points right before halftime. They still had a pretty sizable lead in the second half. Wisconsin just kind of clawed their way back into the game, got back into it, and then it was close for the rest of the game. So Minnesota looked like they were going to win the game and maybe run away with it. And then they wound up falling short and losing the game in a huge rivalry game. Revenge game is a big favorite. That's pretty bad, man. So I think you're going to come up flat in the next game after something like that. And if that wasn't bad enough, they got to play Michigan State next in 3 days. So that's a huge game as well. So I just don't know what they're going to have in this game against the one team that doesn't have a win yet in the conference. And Minnesota is really not that much better than Penn State, like I said. Both teams are pretty bad as far as Big Ten is concerned. Minnesota's playing a second straight road game. Penn State is coming back home, which I like. I like it when teams come back home in college, man, and they lost their last home game because I think they tend to show up better because, well, we lost our last game at home. We're also talking about a Penn State team that they've been somewhat competitive in some of their home games, man. They lost by 4 to Michigan State. They caught Michigan State in a good spot, and that was a play that we won on the show. So there was that, and we were getting a ton of points. But still, that was a good performance from them. And they also only lost by 8 at home to Illinois. They lost by 2 to Michigan at home. And they did also have an 8-point road loss to Purdue. And then coming off of that, they fell flat at home, losing by double digits to UCLA. But this Penn State team has actually competed in some of these games, man. And a 6-point loss at Ohio State's not a horrible result either. So this team can perform, and I don't think they're going to be looking ahead to Michigan, even though that is their next game. You can't afford to overlook anybody, man, when you're a winless team in conference like this and you're coming off another ugly loss. So we are going to ride Penn State in this one. The market does seem to agree with me now. Minnesota has gone up from 1 to 1.5 here. You might be able to get 1.5 on this. 65% of the tickets on them, 55% of the cash. So the public is on Minnesota to some extent. The ticket percentage is on them. The cash percentage less so, which I like to see. We're going to take Penn State. And as far as what Ken Bum says, Ken Bum, I believe, has this as a 1-point win for Minnesota. Yeah, he has Penn State pretty bad at 130th, but he's got them pretty unlucky, 276, so that means they've underperformed a little bit. They're definitely weak defensively. There's no doubt about that. They play kind of a mid-tempo style, but I think Penn State, because they are kind of known for playing a bit faster recently, I think they might do that in this game and just try to score, which is not what Minnesota wants to do. Minnesota plays slow, and they play defense, and I know I usually like defense, especially if they're getting points, although they're not here. But in this case, it's a bad situation for them. I'm going to roll with the offense in this one and hope that Penn State can just run the floor and get Minnesota uncomfortable by playing an up-tempo game. That's what we want here. That's probably what Penn State wants to do here. They have the better offense, although Minnesota obviously has the better defense. Minnesota, they are unlucky, though, according to Ken Bum's luck index. We have 2 pretty unlucky teams here. Both teams have faced a similarly difficult schedule, so that stuff is just kind of a wash. But Minnesota does play excessively slow, so I think if Penn State is able to speed this thing up, that might be able to get this game into their wheelhouse, and they might be able to actually get this thing done. Total is still low, though, at 143, but it has gone up a little bit at the very least. Although money looks like it is coming back in on the under, and I do think we could have side and total potentially correlated in a game like that. But I'm playing the side and I'm playing the spot, man. I think it's a horrible sandwich spot that Minnesota is in. So that's where we're going with that one. All right. I wasn't really planning on talking about the rest of these games. Well, the MAAC just has a lot of situations going on in their conference, man. Like they do have a Quinnipiac, I think is coming off that loss that I think I mentioned. Yeah, they lost at home as a big favorite to Sacred Heart. But if you look at what Quinnipiac was coming off of, they'd played a tough game on the road at Marist the game before that. So I think they were probably a bit hungover after that game. Didn't play well against Sacred Heart. Now I think it might be the bounce back spot because they don't really have anything bigger upcoming. So I think they might go into Fairfield and show up here. Fairfield will get up for it too, though, because these teams are close geographically. They're both in Connecticut and fairly nearby each other. Fairfieldly nearby each other. Although Sacred Heart is also one of those, though, and that's another reason why Sacred Heart probably did get up for that game against Quinnipiac, because Sacred Heart is actually also in Fairfield. So these teams, I think Quinnipiac kind of has established themselves as sort of the bigger brother out of the three. So, yeah, I guess for that reason, maybe Fairfield will try to get up for this. Fairfield is coming off a decent road win at Iona, though. I don't think this is a huge upset, but yeah, Iona was like a 1-2 point favorite there, but that's still a pretty big win. Iona, known for being pretty good in this conference usually, so Fairfield is coming off of that at the very least, although I don't really see them overlooking Quinnipiac here, even though they do have their rival, Sacred Heart, up next, and I don't think they've played them yet this season, so both those teams being in Fairfield. But again, probably they don't overlook Quinnipiac, but I kind of lean towards Quinnipiac just because they are the better team and they're coming off an ugly loss. So the market seems like it does agree, even though Quinnipiac dropped from 2 to 1.5. 60% of the tickets are on Fairfield for some reason, which doesn't make any sense to me because you'd think Quinnipiac would get the public action because they have the better record too, I believe. But 59% of the cash on Quinnipiac. I would agree with that market on the Quinnipiac side there. We have Wright State at Green Bay. Now, the first thing of note here with Green Bay is they just took a horrible loss to Cleveland State. Both of these teams just lost to Cleveland State, which is pretty ridiculous because Cleveland State is not good. They're one of the worst teams in the Horizon. Wright State is probably the best team in the Horizon. Green Bay kind of establishing themselves as a competitor here in the Horizon. But Green Bay is coming off that loss to Cleveland State, and I think Green Bay might have overlooked that, man. They might have been looking ahead to this Wright State game here. So Green Bay coming off a bad loss, should be in bounce-back mode here, should be extra focused. Wright State coming into this game off of beating Milwaukee. Second straight road game. Beating Milwaukee doesn't really matter. Now, these two teams did already play, actually, and Wright State blew the doors off of Green Bay at Wright State. They beat them by almost 30 points, by 28 points. So there is a little bit of a revenge motive here. Or, again, it's more so that Wright State might not take Green Bay seriously after that. Wright State plays Robert Morris next, so I don't think they've played yet. But Robert Morris did win the conference last year at the very least, so they're not that good this year. I'm not saying Wright State's going to completely overlook this game, but the fact that they already demolished this team might mean they don't take them as seriously. Might mean that Green Bay is going to make the adjustments to it. Green Bay's coming off the horrific loss. Wright State already bounced back from their loss to Cleveland State. So I would lean towards Green Bay in this one, towards the Green Bay Phoenix, a.k.a. the fighting Doug Gottliebs, because he is ridiculously their coach now. 82% of the tickets on Wright State, so the public looks like it's on the Wright State side, which is probably not the right side, in my opinion, in this game. 84% of the cash on Wright State. They dropped from 5 to 4. I like Green Bay. That's where we're going with that one. All right. Then we do have Marist and Niagara in the MAAC. Marist, like I said, they're coming off a pretty bad game against Canisius, but that was kind of explainable because Marist had just beaten Quinnipiac in a pretty big win the game before that. So I think they didn't take Canisius seriously. They overlooked them. Barely got by them as a big favorite. Now they're staying in Buffalo, and they might actually show up for a game against Niagara because they didn't play well against Canisius there. So I think they might show up here, even though Niagara's an awful team. Marist has Ryder next, who are also really bad, maybe even worse than Niagara. So I do like Marist in this one. Niagara, as I said, they're coming off a big performance against Siena. Now, while I think they won't overlook Marist because Marist is still one of the better teams in the conference, I mean, there is at least maybe the potential for that because they do have their rival Canisius up next. But I think that game will be bigger for Canisius because they lost to Niagara already. But yes, if I was going to play this game, I would be on the better team in the bounce back spot versus the worst team that's coming off of almost pulling off an upset. So I prefer Marist in this game. Looks like 60% of the tickets and cash on Niagara. Very strange. I would not expect Niagara to be a public side, which seems very bizarre. Marist did drop from 10 to 9 here, so maybe there is actually some professional money coming in on Niagara, maybe for number reasons. Maybe it's a numbers play, but I would lean towards Marist in that game based on the situation. I would probably lay the points. All right. Skipping a couple of these games here. We have a few big games next. One of my plays is left. ESPN2 has Tulane at Memphis at 3 p.m. in the American. Tulane is just not as good as their record looks, man. Memphis is definitely going to be the favorite in this game. Tulane is coming off a bunch of losses in a row, 5 losses in a row, although most of those were to teams that are doing pretty well in the conference, though, so they're not exactly doing that badly. But now they're playing a third road game in 4 games. You know, I mean, they're not going to overlook Memphis, but I don't know, because this Tulane team just isn't really that good. Memphis is coming off beating FAU, though, and absolutely drilling them. That was a big win for Memphis because FAU was right near the top of the standings, so there is the possibility Memphis is in a bit of a letdown here. They got UAB up next, which might be a bigger game because UAB is kind of middle of the pack in the standings, higher than Tulane is. But at the very least, Memphis might be feeling really high on themselves after that huge blowout win of FAU. So I do actually probably lean to Tulane in this one, even though I don't think that they're as good as their record might indicate. Memphis down from 11.5 to 9. So that's kind of the thing here. The line is something that you should take notice of because, like, why would a 10-10 team be laying basically double digits against a 12-9 team, right? Like, the line doesn't look right. So the odds makers are telling you Memphis is the way better team, but it does look like Memphis is getting the public action here. 78% of tickets on them, probably because of name recognition. Everybody sees Memphis making the tournament every year and such. 89% of the cash on Tulane, and I do agree with Tulane, plus the points in that one. And the line has dropped from 11.5 to 9, like I said, on Memphis. So, yeah, based on the spot, I would agree with Tulane there. Then in the horizon, we have Cleveland State at Milwaukee. And like I said, Cleveland State's coming off those back-to-back ridiculous road upsets of Wright State and Green Bay. Wright State, they were probably like 15-point underdogs in that game, maybe more. And then they were probably close to 10-point dogs against Green Bay. So they're coming up back-to-back monster upsets. Now they're facing Milwaukee, who they did lose to at home, though. So that might keep Cleveland State focused just because they are technically in a road revenge angle here because they're playing a team that beat them at home. But coming up with those 2 huge upsets and with Oakland on deck, and Oakland is right near the top of the conference as well, it is also a sandwich spot that Cleveland State is in here. So I think it's a really bad spot for Cleveland State. It's a pretty major letdown spot here. It's just the revenge factor or the fact that Milwaukee might overlook them is a little bit of a concern. And the fact that Milwaukee just played Wright State, also a little bit of a concern because that was a big game. They lost by 7. I think the game wasn't as close as the final looked, though. They don't really have anything that big up next either. So I lean Milwaukee in this game, but it does not make my card. Cleveland State looks like they're a public underdog, which is not really where you want to look usually when you see a public dog. Because then the public is actually siding with the lesser team, which is really not what you want. 67% of the tickets on Cleveland State, believe it or not, and 60% of the cash, so less of the cash on them. Milwaukee's laying 8 points. So maybe the public just is looking at recency and thinking that that line looks too big because why would you want to lay 8 points with a below 500 team, right? So I think that's probably what the public is thinking. But, yes, I would lay the points with Milwaukee if I was going to do it. Cleveland State, they're bad. I mean, they just pulled off those absurd upsets. All right, Fox Sports 1, actually probably the biggest game of the day. Number 9, Illinois. Number 5, Nebraska in the Big Ten. This is my other best bet, the only other one today. Let's do it. As I already said, we're going to be on Illinois, plus the 2.5 here. Now, The 2.5, it might even be 3. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you wait, I don't know if the public's going to be coming in on Nebraska. I think, yeah, I mean, probably waiting is not going to do you any good because, I don't know, Nebraska's about a 2-point favorite now, 2.5, but I still think it's good in this range, even though we missed out on the 3. 67% of tickets, 69% of the cash on Nebraska. So for now, it looks like the cash percentage is on Nebraska, but I expect them to be a public side because it's like, well, you're picking the winner here, and Nebraska has one loss, right? So the public's going to expect Nebraska to bounce right back. Like, oh, Nebraska has one loss, and it was against an elite Michigan team who they almost beat in Ann Arbor. So the public is probably going to say, well, of course, Nebraska will bounce back from that. And you're just asking me to pick the winner, right? So they will probably side with Nebraska, and I am not going to do that. The odds makers are, first of all, telling you by not giving Nebraska even full home court here, they're telling you that Illinois is actually the better team here. I agree with that. I don't think these rankings are correct. 9 versus 5 here. Ken Baum actually has Illinois 6th in the country, and he has Nebraska 12th. So I apologize to Nate for all of this, but I have no real bias here, man. My only bias is towards the handicapping process and what the process is telling me, what the situation tells me, what the analytics are saying to me versus what the rankings makers are trying to sell me. So Ken Baum is telling you what the odds makers are telling you, that Illinois is the better team. I think he does have this being I believe he has this being a 1 or 2 point win for Nebraska. But this line, I don't know about this line, man, because as you know, we played Illinois way back when they were at home against Nebraska, and they lost the game outright. And if you remember, Illinois were like 11-point favorites in this game. So sure, they probably shouldn't have been favored by quite that much. Michigan was just favored by 11 against them. Michigan is better than Illinois. So, okay, let's say that line should have been like 9. Illinois, a 9-point favorite at home against Nebraska, probably would have been a fair, actual line based on what we've seen since then. And if that's the case, then Illinois should basically still be a favorite in this game. So this line just seems a little bit off to me, man. I think potentially the wrong team might be favored in this one. Illinois, I like how the setup is too. Even though usually the public is recency bias, I think they're just kind of ignoring Illinois because they just have really one really good win in here on the road at Purdue that might catch the public's eye, but the public doesn't even look that far back really. But you remember what I did in Illinois' game after that. I faded them. I said play Washington plus the points at Illinois, and Washington, sure enough, they covered. Illinois was okay in the game, and their momentum will continue, but they were in a huge sandwich spot because they just pulled off the big upset at Purdue, which is very difficult to do, and they had this monster game at Nebraska on deck, so that was a sandwich spot. So now we have Illinois coming off a not great performance, but it was explainable in a bad spot. They still won, so the momentum continues, and now they get Nebraska in a road revenge spot where it's a spot where Illinois, as a big favorite at home, lost to this Nebraska team. So I think Illinois will have the adjustments to make in this game. I'm not going to say Nebraska's going to overlook them, but I do think Illinois will have things to change after that first game, figure out what went wrong, because I still think they are the better team, and the better team with the adjustments to make, I think, is going to win out. Plus, I think Nebraska's in a horrible spot because they're coming off a huge game against Michigan, first of all. I know this is also a big game against Illinois, but that was a monster game against Michigan. That was considered to be like the battle for the best team, maybe even in the country, according to some people, which I don't think so. I mean, obviously, I think it's Michigan versus Arizona. But huge game, man. And Nebraska fell just short. I thought Michigan would have an easier time winning that game, but no. Nebraska was in that game the whole time, and they were winning that game for quite a bit, and Michigan had to kind of escape with the win at the end. It was a monster game for Nebraska, and what do I always tell you? When a team, especially this deep into the season, Nebraska was one of 3 remaining undefeated teams left. A team gets this deep into the season, they go 20-0 to start the season, and then they finally lose. And this has been a great angle that's worked this year, and I haven't really used it myself very much. So, of course, this is going to be the one time where it loses, right? But when a team goes this deep into the season and they finally lose, that usually hangs them over too. It's like they lose that same game twice because they haven't faced that kind of adversity, or like they're not used to it. They haven't lost a game yet. So, like, how do you bounce back from that? You know what I mean? And it's happened in other cases this year already. It happened to Vanderbilt. It happened to like some of these other teams that were undefeated late into the season. Vandy, and then who were the other ones? I forget. There were a couple other ones, and they all lost that next game. So that's what we're going with here as well. That angle is coming into play here. I don't know what to call it, but the loss of perfection hangover spot here. Yep, we're going to go with Illinois here, man. And those are my two plays on the day here. Plus the points, and obviously put some of the bet on the money line as well in that one. All right, and then we do have a couple other TV games. East Tennessee State and Wofford. These two games are going to be at night. A lot of times there are no night games on Sunday, but there are now because this is the first Sunday since the start of football season where we do not have any football. No NFL on Sunday, man. Feels like a naked Sunday as we have to wait until next week for the Super Bowl. And yes, I will have a Super Bowl special episode. Probably I'll do it on Saturday because I don't think we're going to get any. I don't think we're really going to lose value on the line or whatever. And Super Bowl, if you're fading the public, like the public's going to come in and like probably hammer some of these props in like an opposite way. But generally, I would say I don't really have any statistical props yet that I really love, though. Like I just have my kind of mind fuck props, and those are ones where I fade the public. So in those ones, I just wait like right up until game time almost to get the best number, because if you're fading the public in the Super Bowl, the public's going to influence the number. You know, it's like the only game where the public can influence the number. So if you like anything in the Super Bowl that's in opposition to the public, basically you can wait up until the game starts, and most of my plays are that way. So I'll let people know if I do wind up with like some statistical prop that I want to go with that's not going to factor into that, but as of now, I don't. I just have like kind of my standard props, and I like the side in the game, which you already know. I like New England, but I still think we're going to get basically the same number for this entire week. So, and maybe a better number leading up towards game time because I think the public is against them. All right, East Tennessee State at Wofford, night game, 7 p.m., CBS Sports. This is a good game. This is the best game in the SoCon today. These are the top two teams in the conference record-wise right now, and possibly power ratings-wise as well. The Mercer's kind of in the mix there too. East Tennessee State coming off that ugly loss to Western Carolina. So I think they might have been looking ahead to Wofford. I think they might bounce back here in this game against Wofford. So East Tennessee State probably going to be in a bounce-back mode here, and they are the better team against Wofford. Wofford coming in off of obliterating Chattanooga, like I said. And now they're not going to overlook East Tennessee, but East Tennessee might just have a little bit more motivation here just to bounce back from that horrendous loss. You might maybe get a little bit of live value that way. So I like East Tennessee State in this game. Wofford looks like they're the public side here. 78% of the tickets, only 68% of the cash on them. And that is really not what you want. A home public underdog, you don't see those too often, and usually you want to fade those. So you're getting the better team and going against the public, and the public is on the home team in that one. Very, very odd. But yes, I would go with East Tennessee in that one. The odds makers are telling you they're still the better team by a decent margin here in that they're favored on the road. But the public is just seeing both teams have the same record. They're seeing what teams did last. I'll take the points, right, with the home team. That's what the public is thinking in the game. But the odds makers are telling you to not think that way. So you can kind of figure out, like the odds makers are telling you a tale sometimes with what they set these numbers at, to try to induce action potentially a certain way. Although really their goal is to split the action, though. But, the fact that they set a number at a certain the fact that they set a certain number, they kind of have to know that they're going to get one-way action in some of these cases, right? And sometimes they seem to be just pretty much okay with it. And then Fox Sports 1, the late game, 8 p.m., is a Big Ten game with Iowa at Oregon. And I have conflicting reads on this game where Iowa didn't get the job done for us against USC, even though they had a huge lead in that game against USC. They fell short. They lost the game. They didn't lose the game. They fell short of the number, They were blowing USC out for a while there, and then they wound up almost losing the game, which is ridiculous. So now Iowa is in a spot where they should have played better. They almost lost as a big favorite, so they did get a scare. Now, I do like playing on teams that had a scare because they usually show up focused, but I don't know if I want them in a late-night game going to an unfamiliar time zone and unfamiliar environment, right? Like going out to Oregon. Oregon is definitely bad, but of course Iowa's going to be a favorite in this game for that reason too. But yeah, I worry about it. It does seem like it should be a positive spot for them though, because they're coming off that close game that shouldn't have been close as a big favorite. Oregon is going to be desperate probably though. I mean, they've been awful this year. They have one conference win. They haven't won for quite a while since I think, really early in conference play. But the first game in official conference play was the last time they won a game. And they're staying in the Pacific time zone at the very least. So there are some things that are better for Oregon here, like they're staying at home. And they probably can't overlook anybody at this point. But Iowa, the better team should be pretty motivated off of that bad performance. Iowa's up from a 9-point favorite to a 10.5-point favorite, but they are the public side, 77% of the tickets and only 63% of the cash on them. So the market read is saying take the points with Oregon. And you are getting a lot of points here in what is probably going to be an ugly game. Total's low, and it's gone lower, 133. I mean, we know Iowa plays slow. They play like low-scoring games. Oregon plays a lot of ugly, low-scoring games as well. So points might be at a premium there. So I'm not really going to disagree with taking the points with Oregon, but I do not want any part of that game. Jeff, what's up, man? Rider is a gross underdog. You think the line looks short? I could talk about that game, I guess. I haven't talked about that game, I don't think. I think that was one of the only games I skipped. I don't like the game, but let me see. It's St. Peter's at Rider. St. Peter's is coming off, they bounced back from that Merrimack loss. I guess they beat Mount St. Mary's, which they should have because they were a favorite there. Now they're going to Rider. They might overlook Rider because Rider sucks, and St. Peter's did already beat them by double digits at home, so I don't know. But they only play Manhattan next, so that's not a big look-ahead spot or anything, so I don't know. I don't really see much in the spot one way or the other for St. Peter's there. For Rider, they're coming off a close loss at Manhattan. Now, how big of an underdog were they in this game? 5.5, so they technically covered, but not by much. That wasn't like the biggest game for Rider, though, and I don't really think they're going to overlook St. Peter's after they did lose to them, so, I don't have much for this game, but I think I would lean to Rider plus the points in this one if I was going to play the game, and the market seems like it is in line with that as St. Peter's dropped from an 8-point favorite to a 7.5-point favorite. 72% of the tickets are on them. Rider, 54% of the cash, though. So the money is agreeing with Rider in that game. Total has gone up a little bit, but it's still low in the 130s. I mean, these teams both play pretty ugly games. But, I mean, I don't know. Is it short? I mean, St. Peter's is not a good team. Ken Baum has them well outside the top 200. He has them very lucky, 26 in the country in luck. So he's telling you St. Peter's is nowhere near as good as they look, and they need to lay that many points, and they're barely in the top 300 offensively, according to Ken Baum. That is not something I would want to do, lay points with that team. Rider is absolutely pitiful, though. I know. Their offense is one of the absolute worst. Their defense is hardly any better than that, but they are unlucky, according to Ken Baum, at 330th. So I actually think there actually might be some line value in that game with Rider in that one because of what Ken Baum is telling you with the luck index. He's telling you that Rider should be at least a little bit better than they look right now, and that St. Peter's should be worse than they look. And if the line seems short, if it's something that looks too good to be true, but yes, I lean towards Rider in that game. That would be my opinion, but I don't want to. I would not want to have any money on that. I think you might be a little bit psycho if you want to play that game at all. But again, if you forced me to, I would take the points with Rider in that one. All right, NHL. We have 3 games here. There's an ESPN doubleheader as well. The first game up is an afternoon game at 3 p.m. LA Kings at Carolina. The Kings just won at Philadelphia. I think both teams played yesterday because almost every team played yesterday, except for my Boston Bruins, and I think maybe their opponent today. Kings beat Philadelphia in overtime yesterday, so they might be getting a little bit tired coming off of that, man. They're playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities, and luckily for them, they did have a postponed game prior to that because it would be even worse for them if they had to have played that game in Columbus. But still, they're on a back-to-back with travel. coming off an overtime game, a pretty big win at Philadelphia. They're not going to overlook Carolina, but I do think the spot sets up better for Carolina. Carolina's staying at home. Or no, excuse me, they're not staying at home. They went to Washington. But I think that might still be a little bit of an easier travel spot. And they were at home the game before that. And they had 4 days off prior to that. So Carolina is the more rested team. They lost yesterday. They did play an overtime game, but they lost at Washington. So now they're back home. I think the spot does set up better for Carolina, even though the Kings are decent on the road. They'll show up for a game against Carolina, but Carolina's the better team. It looks like the money's agreeing with Carolina. They went up from minus 184 to minus 185. 70% of the tickets and 88% of the cash on them. I agree with that. I would lean Carolina as well. If you want to play that game, you probably have to make your own -1 puck line on that, or, do Carolina to win in regulation, which, I was not a fan of when I was doing those bets, so I don't know, although for Carolina, it might be a better proposition to get them to win in regulation, because they only have 6 overtime losses on the entire season, so when they win, they usually do it in regulation. So there is that aspect of it, and that would cut the price down quite a bit. ESPN at 6:30 has my Boston Bruins, not at Tampa Bay, although the game's in Tampa Bay, versus Tampa Bay, because this is one of these new stupid Stadium Series games, the Navy Federal Credit Union Stadium Series. They're playing in Raymond James Stadium, the Buccaneers Stadium. I don't know how this setup is going to be, because in Florida, you would imagine it's not cold enough to have an ice rink out there. Although, I don't know. People have said that it did get cold in Florida recently, so I could be wrong about that. But obviously, when they scheduled this game, they couldn't bank on that. Bank, no pun intended. But with both snow and a credit union, there you go. So I don't know what this game is going to look like. If they somehow make it indoors, I mean, it seems very, very bizarre to me. It's going to be bizarre for both teams. It's kind of a big event, so both teams will probably show up for it. The Bruins coming off a pretty good-looking win against Philadelphia coming into this game. I don't think they're going to look ahead, because Tampa's just really, really good this year, although the Bruins do have what's kind of become a hated rival of theirs with Florida on deck, because Florida's got Marchand now. Florida knocked the Bruins out of the playoffs, not last year, but both years, the 2 years prior to that. Still, I don't think they're going to overlook Tampa in a big event like this on ESPN. Tampa, they're at least staying in Tampa, though. Neither of these teams played yesterday, so almost every team played yesterday, but not these two, because I think it's because they were getting preparation time for this game. Tampa's on a little bit of a run. They're coming off a win over Winnipeg at home, which is not a great win, whatever. I think the spot probably does set up a little bit better for Tampa in this one. Not going to really disagree with Tampa here, unfortunately, for my Bruins, but Tampa, yes, Tampa is a pretty big favorite, down from minus 205 to minus 200, but 72% of the tickets on them and 86% of the cash on them. It looks like every public side is also the money side in these 3 games today. So I guess do with all that information what you want to. I mean, it would be, if you're going to play Tampa, you'd have to pretty much play them puck line or to win in regulation or something. So I don't know. I don't really want to do that. That's probably the game where I have the least strong opinion out of all 3 of these. Vegas at Anaheim. Vegas is coming off an ugly home loss to Seattle yesterday. It was, I was going to say, I thought it was overtime. It wasn't, though. Vegas, of course, was a big favorite in that game. So they're coming off a game where they lost as a big favorite. You can kind of explain that because they had a big game against Dallas the game before that. And I did talk about yesterday how I leaned to Seattle in that game. Vegas coming off the big game against Dallas. This could be a bounce-back spot here. They do have to travel to Anaheim, although that's not a huge travel leg from Vegas to Anaheim. No time off here, though. Anaheim actually didn't play yesterday, so Anaheim does have a rest advantage, but they have a huge disadvantage, however, as well, because they're returning home from a road trip that they've been on since Wednesday the 21st, so they went to Colorado. They actually started out the road trip really well and then lost the last 2. They are coming off the much, much uglier loss of the 2, losing to Vancouver, and that was a win for us on the show. We went with the horrendously ugly Vancouver Canucks in that one because I hated the spot for Anaheim coming off just a heartbreaking loss with the way they lost to Edmonton after they potentially could have won that game. Then they had this huge ESPN Vegas game on deck, so I thought it was a sandwich spot. Might have been a hangover spot, too, because they lost a big win streak. So I liked Vancouver in that one. We got it done. Now, I think the perception would be, well, Anaheim's going to bounce back now that they're back at home. But I don't see that being the case. The return home spot is really, really awful. As I always point out, I know they've had a couple of days off here, but when you return home, you have to get back to home life. You got stuff to do. You got to figure that stuff out. It could be a distraction. They're not going to overlook Vegas, but the return home spot usually is at least somewhat of a factor. So I think the travel spot is a little bit better for Vegas. And the situational spot, I think, does help Vegas here, even though they did play yesterday. Anaheim did flip from plus 116 to minus 110 here, and I don't know if that was, again, because of goaltender announcements or what, but 73% of the tickets and 93% of the cash on Vegas, and I agree with the Vegas side in that one, but I don't have a play in any of those games. But those are my opinions on the sides, and those are the two ESPN doubleheader games there, and I don't think that this one is in any sort of outdoor stadium. This one is actually just at Anaheim. So we'll see. We'll see what that Tampa Bay versus Bruins, Lightning versus Bruins game looks like there. All right, and then we have NBA. We do have one ESPN game, which is Milwaukee at Boston. I mean, I don't know why this – I guess – when the schedule makers put this out there, I guess, well, they thought Giannis was going to be there probably, and he's not. So the Celtics are a big favorite here, obviously. It will be the return of Doc Rivers again to Boston, although he's certainly played. He's had his Milwaukee team play in Boston since then, of course. I don't think he's a very good coach, though, to be honest. Like, I know he won the championship with the Celtics, but I just don't think he's doing a good job, man. But Milwaukee, I mean, things couldn't really get worse for them right now because they did just lose to Washington. That is a horrible loss, and maybe they were looking ahead to Boston with not a whole lot left to play for here. Second game without Giannis, a lot of times you'll not play well in that second game, even though they didn't even play well in the first game without him. And usually they will step up a team usually will step up their level of play when their star player goes down that first game, but that wasn't the case. But then with the Washington game, I think maybe they were looking ahead to the Bruins, to the Celtics a little bit here. I think Milwaukee will actually at least show up in this game. Hopefully the Celtics don't lose. I mean, they shouldn't. They bounced back nicely with a win on Friday. We got a win on that here on the show, laying the points with the Celtics, because that was a bounce-back spot for them. Now, the Celtics rested Jaylen Brown in that game, so he is probably going to play in the game here on ESPN, and he is their best player. But a lot of times when the best player is out for a game and they play really well without him, a lot of times the team will kind of get complacent and take their foot off the gas with him back. So I worry about that aspect of this game for the Celtics too. I mean, I don't think they should lose, and they don't have a huge game up next, although it's another TV game at Dallas. It is the start of a road trip. So I do lean to the Bucks plus the points in this game, but it's not a strong lean. The market seems like it does agree. The Celtics are up to a 13-point favorite from 12.5. 80% of the tickets on the Celtics and 73% of the cash, so the money is sort of indicating on the Bucks in the game. I don't disagree, but it's not a strong opinion of mine, and I just hope the Celtics get out of there with a win for my rooting purposes. Brooklyn is at Detroit. Brooklyn just ended a long losing streak with a win, unfortunately, against us. That was my loser on Friday with the Utah Jazz. Brooklyn got the win. Not a big win by any means, although it was a road win. But I think what that could do is that could give them some momentum now, because when you break that losing momentum as a bad team and you don't do it against a good team, I think that will give you some momentum coming into the next game. Although they are playing a third game in 4 days in different cities, 4th and 6th and a 5th and 8. And a 6th and 10, all in different cities. So that's a little bit worrisome. I don't see them looking ahead to the Lakers, because I don't think you overlook the Detroit Pistons, who have the best record in the Eastern Conference. But the travel spot and the lack of rest is a bit of a concern for Brooklyn here. But the momentum might carry after that last win. Detroit did just have a big win on the road against Golden State, and now they're returning home from a road trip. Not a long road trip. It was less than a week. And, I like fading teams coming off of those long road trips because stuff piles up at home. You have stuff to do at home. So You can get distracted. I still think this is a bad spot for Detroit, though, even though it wasn't a long road trip. They went into elevation, beat Denver, although it was without Jokic at the time. And then they went out to the Pacific Coast, and now they're having to change time zones coming back home. They do play Denver with Jokic in their next game, so that could be a pretty major look-ahead spot there, too. So the return home spot still could lend itself to some distractions here. They're also playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, and a fifth game in 8 days, all in different cities. So the scheduling spot, like the amount of rest is basically the same for both teams. So I have to lean towards the Nets in this one, plus the points. The money seems like it's not totally agreeing with that right now. The Pistons down from 13.5 to 13. 82% of the tickets on them, 95% of the cash on the Pistons. For now, that might change by the time the game happens because it is an evening game, but I would only lean towards the Nets in that game, man, plus the points there. I do not like the spot for Detroit, and I would like it even less if it was a long road trip that they were returning from, or if they had lost that game to Denver on the road. But I still think that is actually probably one of the stronger leans of the day. I like Brooklyn. Chicago at Miami. I was right about Chicago yesterday, so the zigzag was in effect. Even though I thought the line actually might have been a little bit short on Miami, Chicago still got the job done. They won outright. They made the adjustments, I think, although the first game was close. But now I think the zigzag favors Miami here because they're playing the same game again at Miami. The line is actually a little bit shorter this time for Miami based on yesterday's results alone. And if you look at this game, this was actually way more of an outlier than the first game was. The Bulls hit 50% of their three-pointers. I know the Bulls do jack up a lot of three-pointers, but they hit 23s, man. They shot 50% from three versus Miami only shooting 28%. That's a huge disparity that I think basically was the difference in the game. So that is definitely something that could regress coming off of that. So I like Miami for that reason. But also it's that, you know, the Bulls might be the team that makes the adjustments here because if you're Miami and you just won this game yesterday, you don't have anything to fix if you're the Bulls, I like Miami in this game. If you're the Bulls and you won yesterday, you don't have anything to fix, is what I'm trying to say here. This line did open at 3, so it was actually lower. You could have gotten a much lower number. It was at 4.5 yesterday. It's still a little bit lower than that, and I even thought the 4.5 was actually a little bit short, so I would still lay this number with the Heat at 4.5, which is where it is now. 85% of tickets, 95% of the cash on the Heat. And you're also playing the better team in the adjustment spot, in the bounce back spot. And the Bulls should regress from three-point, and the Heat should probably hit a few more of their three-pointers than they did yesterday. So I like the Heat in that game. They will be the team that has the adjustments to make. Chicago, everything worked for them yesterday, so they don't really have anything to fix. Except I think they did lose the turnover battle, so maybe there is that. I'm not going to play the game, but I like Miami in that one. Utah at Toronto. Utah's on this bad losing streak. Might be good for them to just get out of home, man, when they just lost almost every game in their homestand, culminating in losing to Brooklyn in what I thought was a decent spot to catch Brooklyn. Horrible result for Utah, so maybe the best thing for them is to just forget about that, go on the road, focus on basketball, ignore what's going on at home. Weird travel spot to have to go up to Toronto, but I do think Utah should show up in this game with some focus. Toronto, they just lost at Orlando, so they are traveling as well, coming back from Orlando. A more difficult game. They lost by 10, and Toronto potentially could have won this game. Toronto was winning into the fourth quarter in this game, and then they wound up falling short, and they were actually down double digits before the game was over. They weren't a huge underdog in the game or anything, but still it was a big game with a pretty big flip-flop at the end of the game, and they do have Minnesota up next too. So I lean Utah in this game. That's the way I would play it if I was going to play it. Toronto down from 11.5 to 10 here. Toronto's actually not very good at home either, even though I know Utah is not very good on the road either. But something's got to give here. I prefer the spot for the Jazz. The money seems to agree with that. 67% of tickets on the Raptors, 65% of the cash, though, on the Jazz. So the money is on the Jazz. I agree with the Jazz there, with the ticket percentage being on Toronto. Sacramento at Washington. I mean, doesn't get much uglier than this game. Now, I think these two teams played, not that long ago. Sacramento won by double digits in Washington, and I believe that was without Sabonis because he didn't come back until more recently than that. So Sacramento just beat That was in Sacramento, excuse me. Sacramento beat Washington at home without Sabonis. So they might take Washington a little bit lightly coming into this game, man, even though Sacramento shouldn't really overlook anybody at this point because they haven't won a game in a bunch of tries. Now they've lost 8 in a row. They haven't won any game on this road trip. This is the final road trip, so you could make the argument they should show up for this game. They're coming off not a bad loss, but they got blown out by the Celtics. And I think it was a bad spot because Sacramento had played well the game before that against Philadelphia. So I guess you could argue they're going to try to salvage the last game on the road trip, and maybe they won't overlook a Washington team they beat easily the last time. Washington coming into this game staying at home, and they got blown out at home by over 30 points by the Lakers in their last game. So they should probably be focused as well, though you might have to worry about the look ahead here to the Knicks coming up next. But I don't think Washington will overlook Sacramento because they lost at Sacramento, like I said, and that was Sacramento without Sabonis, and I believe they do have him now. The Kings look like they're getting all the money, though, based on the market read here. Kings down from 3 to 2.5, but they got 73% of the cash on them, and 62% of the tickets are on the Wizards. Like, really? Do you really think the public is actually playing the Wizards in this game? I mean, maybe, because I guess their record is actually better than Sacramento's now, believe it or not. Sacramento is horrendous on the road, though. 3-22. Like, do you really want to lay points with Sacramento on the road, even against a bad Wizards team when they're 3-22 on the road, and you're asking them to have to win by a few points too? I'm not so sure about that, man. Washington has been better at home than on the road. They're 8-16 at home. I kind of lean towards Washington in the game. I don't know what's going on with that market read, but I disagree with that one. Orlando at San Antonio. Orlando's coming into this game off of beating Toronto. Decent win, but they do have some momentum. They're not going to overlook San Antonio, even though they do have Oklahoma City next. This is a big game in its own right. They're starting a road trip, even though it's only those 2 games. But I expect Orlando to show up against San Antonio. Now, San Antonio is returning home from the road, although it was only a 2-game road trip. Not far, Houston and Charlotte. But they did play yesterday against Charlotte. They did lose. Like I said, this Charlotte team is not as bad as people might think, man, although people are starting to figure that out. They've been playing one of the best teams in the league over the last month or two. But San Antonio did play yesterday, even though they were a favorite and they lost. And a lot of times I like a team to bounce back when they were a favorite and they lost. I'm not so sure it happens here because they are traveling with no time off, and they have a huge now revenge game against the Thunder next on ESPN on Wednesday because they did finally lose at the Thunder the last time. They're hosting the Thunder in the next game. So I prefer the Magic in this game. I lean Magic. I actually think this might be one of the stronger leans in the NBA today, and it is one of the stronger market reads as well. Spurs down from 6.5 to 5 here. So the line has moved, reverse moved against the public Spurs side here. 67% of tickets on the Spurs, 62% of the cash on the Magic. I agree with that market read there and that move. I lean to Orlando in that one, plus the points. All right. Lakers at the Knicks. It's a big game. It's on NBC. 2 big games here. The NBC Peacock doubleheader here. This is one of the 2. Should be a good game. Should be an interesting game. Lakers probably the better offense. The Knicks definitely the better defense because the Lakers are just pretty horrendous defensively. The Lakers might be getting a little bit tired out finishing a road trip here. They've been on for quite a while, but they're not going to overlook the Knicks on the road. They're coming off an easy win over Washington in their last game, but the Lakers have really only had one real big test on this road trip that was at Cleveland, and they got obliterated by Cleveland. And I think the Knicks are better than Cleveland, so I don't know, man. I mean, I know the Knicks are better than Cleveland. Cleveland with some injuries going on there, too. The Knicks are staying at home for this. They're coming off a blowout win over Portland, but they're on a roll with 5 wins in a row. None of them really that impressive or against impressive teams, really. The best one on the road at Philadelphia. Before Paul George got suspended, by the way, which I found out about that in the middle of the day yesterday. So George got suspended, and the line dropped on the Sixers down to like 5.5 yesterday. And the Sixers covered that. They won by 10. So I thought the Sixers, without that information, I was leaning towards the Sixers covering the bigger number. based on the situation, which I think they pushed because I think the number was 10, but George is suspended for PEDs or something for like 25 games, which is crazy, but it does seem like the Sixers stepped it up in the first game without him. So it was the suspended player theory, which I don't think is as good as the injured player theory, because the injured player theory almost always results in the team rallying for that player, but the suspension, they might not rally around that, you know what I mean? Because it's not like an accidental thing, so I think it's it puts you in a more questionable headspace. But anyway, the Knicks playing LA here, and I think really the thing that you have to look at this game, because both teams will be focused, is these two teams have very similar records, but why are the Knicks laying like a decent amount of points here, 4.5, right? So I think the public's going to think there's value in a game that appears to be competitive and want to take the Lakers. I will disagree with it. I like the Knicks. The Knicks are also very strong at home, 19-6. Lakers not as good on the road, 17-10. So the Knicks have some advantage there as well. Some of that will be built into the line, though. The money, I believe, looks like it is indicating on the Knicks. Yeah, we have a 50-50 ticket split here. Actually, 51% now on the Knicks, but 79% of the cash. So it looks like the real money is on the Knicks, at least for now. It looks like it's headed towards 5. And, yeah, I would lay it with the Knicks. This would be more of a numbers play in this one. I think the Knicks are the better team by more than what people think. And you know me, I like the better defense. So I think the offenses are actually somewhat comparable. And then the other thing you do have to look at here, though, I would wait to play the Knicks here, because the other thing I'm glad I forgot about this. I'm glad that I remembered. The Lakers might be getting Austin Reeves back tonight. He's questionable right now. So if it's announced that he's going to come back, you know what that means. It's the reverse injured player spot. I talk about that a lot. When a crucial player comes back for a team, the line's going to adjust for it, and it usually over-adjusts. So you usually get value fading that team. And when he comes back, the team a lot of times will get a little bit complacent just mentally, because they think, oh, well, we're on a nice little run here, and now we get one of our best players back. So, kind of just mentally we don't have to quite try as hard. That's a thing that just does happen mentally. So usually you want to fade the team in that first game with that player back, and the team has to figure out their new roles again and adjust to it. So it's a chemistry thing. Now, a lot of these teams they know this. So a lot of these teams are kind of bringing these players back incrementally now. So he might come back and he might come off the bench, but I'm going to lean to the Knicks anyway, even if he doesn't come back. But if he does and he's coming off the bench, I still think that's good, because the odds makers, all they're going to know is that he's coming back. They can't predict whether the Lakers are going to put him right back in the starting lineup or not, really. So the line basically is going to have to fully adjust to him coming back. So if Reeves is coming back, I think this line is going to drop on the Knicks. So I would wait, because I don't want the Lakers in this game. So I would wait, and if Reeves comes back, I think I would. I'm not going to make it a play on the show. I'll avoid it, but the way that I would play it is wait, and then if the line does drop and Reeves is coming back, the Knicks would be the play there, although I'd still lean to the Knicks if that doesn't happen as well. Clippers at Phoenix. Clippers coming into this game off a pretty ugly loss to Denver, which actually was the return of Jokic. I apologize. I didn't realize Jokic was coming back. The information wasn't out there that morning, which it makes doing this show in the morning a little bit difficult, man, because you don't know what the personnel is going to be in the NBA. But I still do pretty well playing the NBA, doing it with the morning plays, so whatever. Clippers did just take that loss, which it would have been expected that Denver would have not played quite as well first game with Jokic back, because he's the star player, of course, and the team has to kind of adjust to it again. The line would have moved, whatever. But nope, Denver covered. The line on Denver was actually still fairly short in that game. I thought they were only 5.5-point favorites with Jokic back. But the odds makers do continue to tell you that this Clipper team is not as bad as their record looks. They've been playing a lot better recently. They've kind of found their thing again, and they still have a lot of talent on this team. Although Kawhi Leonard is old, but he's been playing pretty well. Harden is old too, but they're playing pretty well right now. And Zubac is good. Kind of hoping the Celtics actually get Zubac, though, because it seems like they might be trying to trade for a big man. But the Clippers may bounce back from that loss against Denver. For the Suns, they're coming off a nice, satisfying win against Cleveland by double digits, so they might be feeling a little bit high off of that, and they beat Detroit by double digits the game before that, so two pretty big wins might have them riding a bit of a high here, so I probably have to lean to the Clippers in this game for that reason. Phoenix does have an NBC game up next against Portland, although I don't know if they're really going to look ahead to that necessarily, but it is at least a TV game. I like the Clippers in this one, and the other reason for it is the line just makes no sense if you're just looking at the records. Like, why would a below 500 team be laying points on the road against an above 500 team, right? Like, the line makes absolutely no sense. But again, that's because the Clippers have found themselves again, and the odds makers are telling you the Clippers, believe it or not, the Clippers are actually the better team than the Suns. So I lean to the Clippers for that reason too, because it's a very misleading line. They've gone up from pick'em to 1.5 here, 59% of the tickets on them, 85% of the cash. So the market read agrees with me on that one with the Clippers. That would be my lean in that one. Cleveland at Portland. Cleveland is coming off that loss that I just mentioned to the Suns, so they might be in a bit of a bounce-back mode here. They were coming off beating the Lakers, which is always a satisfying win, and they crushed the Lakers. And having to change time zones and go out to Phoenix, so they could have been in a bit of a letdown spot. Now, I guess you might have to worry that because they lost that game and they lost a 5-game win streak, you might worry about the hangover a little bit coming into this game, but I don't know. I think it might be more of a bounce-back spot for them coming into this one. For Portland, they're not going to overlook this game either, though. Portland's coming off a blowout loss to the Knicks, but the problem is, well, I mean, I guess there is the potential they might overlook it, so I misspoke a little bit there because Portland is returning home from a road trip. They've been on it since Monday. It wasn't a long road trip, but they had to fly cross country. They played 3 games on the East Coast. They lost all of them, and a lot of times the public's tendency will be to think, oh, they're going to bounce back at home, but I tend to think that's not the case. I hate these teams returning home from road trips, man, because they get back to family life. It gets distracting. They have stuff to do. As I keep saying, I don't know they're necessarily going to overlook a team like Cleveland, but it's possible they do because their next game is against Phoenix. Phoenix is in their conference, a Western Conference team, and has a better record than Cleveland right now. And that's a TV game, so there is actually the possibility that Portland might overlook it. So based on all of those things, I probably have to lean to the Cavs in this game. Cavs are a 3-point favorite. The money has come in on the Cavs a little bit. They're a little bit heavier of a favorite now, 3 with juice. 80% of the tickets, and 95% of the cash, on the Cavs side. So, yeah, they're going to be the public side, but it looks like some of the real money is on them as well. And, again, whenever you see those return home spots that are from a trip that was like almost a week long or greater, I would always have to lean towards fading that team or just avoid the game. But even though, yeah, I think the Cavs debatably could be in a bounce-back spot here. So, yeah, I like the Cavs in that one. And then we have OKC at Denver, the second of the NBC Peacock doubleheader. And Denver is, again, with Jokic back now. So this is going to be an interesting one. I think both teams are fairly intact for this one, although OKC has been dealing with some injuries throughout the season. Looks like Caruso is still out for them. Well, I guess Jalen Williams is still out, but Hartenstein came back a little while ago. As far as the Nuggets are concerned, let me see. Looks like Murray, Jokic, and Gordon is out, actually, my mistake. But Murray and Jokic are both game-time decisions. But big ESPN TV game. If they can go, they're probably going to go against OKC. Now, as far as what the spot looks like, OKC did just lose to Memphis. Minnesota. That's better than losing to Memphis. But they did just lose at Minnesota by double digits. But they're having to fly into elevation here, man. So it's not that easy necessarily to change time zones like this, fly into elevation. But they might bounce back off a pretty ugly loss, losing by double digits, even though it was against a solid Minnesota team. Denver probably sets up a little bit better in this game because they're staying at home. They just beat the Clippers, which still isn't that great, really, necessarily. Jokic came back in the game. He did well in the game. That should have been the injured player theory spot game, but because they played well in it, I just don't think there is going to be one. Usually the team plays better in the second game with that injured player back, and that is what they have now, but a lot of times that's because they bounce back after the first game isn't that good. But even so, I mean, he's still got that game under his belt now, so that's a positive. Then now there's momentum. The team's kind of reassumed their roles and whatever. But this line has moved up to 8, so actually, I don't know. Like, this line was not at 8 when I looked at this game earlier, so I might have to reassess. I got to look at these injuries again. Does that mean Jokic is not playing again here? No, he's probable. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know why that line has moved to 8. That line seems a little bit out of control, man. Let me see if Murray's playing or not. Probable. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with this line, man. I don't know why this line moved from 3.5 to 8. And the Thunder, I mean, the guys that I expected to play look like they will play, so for the Thunder. So I don't know. 64% of the tickets, 92% of the cash on the Thunder. So the money is definitely on the side of the Thunder, but I kind of disagree with it. I don't know why this line is up to 8. I think the spot's a little bit better for the Nuggets, and if the Nuggets are going to have Jokic there and whatever, yeah, I'd lean towards taking the points, even though Denver hasn't been great at home, really. But Oklahoma City seems like they're being overvalued in a lot of these cases. So that's it, man. That's going to do it. Longer show than I wanted it to be on a Sunday, but that's the show. We have 2 plays, college basketball. Penn State plus the 1 or 1.5 is as ugly as it gets. And then Illinois plus the 2.5. That's going to do it. Hopefully we can get some wins. Big Ten action there for today. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Like, subscribe to the show here. Subscribe to me on Twitter as well. But, yeah, we need to get more subscribers here on the YouTube, man. Pump it up. Blast it far and wide. By which I mean shout it out, not make fun of it. Although either way, it'll get eyes on it. Give me good comments on here as well. You know, the whole deal. Listen on audio, review on audio. That helps as well on Spotify, Apple. That helps out. I don't know what else I was going to say. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube. Check that out as well. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. You get some bonus Uke stuff. And the Loser Cast, the comedy podcast that I'm on Tuesday nights. We'll be back on Tuesday. That's going to do it for now. I appreciate it, guys. Peace. Until tomorrow morning, I suppose. Peace.